Daisy.
And I'm Terri.
And this is the Monday Mindset Podcast,
where we share things of interest to us and hopefully to you.
So let's get started with episode number 234. And today it is Terri's turn to share something with us. Terri, what do you have?
Well, Daisy, I went back to one of our infamous Jim Kwik Brain lines of approach. And Daisy, I noticed something interesting that you probably already paid attention to, and I've just missed all of these months and years. I didn't realize that the episodes that we listen to as a podcast are shorter versions of his YouTube episodes that are full length. I'm like, oh my gosh, how did I miss this detail? But now I need to go back and listen to this one in its longer form because I think it's really interesting. So the episode is called The 80-20 Rule of Longevity, How to Extend Your Lifespan with Dr. Darshan Shah. And who doesn't want to work on quality of life and expanding our lifespan as long as it's healthy? So first, I think it's important to talk a little bit about who this guy is and why Jim Kwik was talking to him. So Dr. Darshan Shah is a board-certified surgeon, and he had been completing surgeries since he was 21. He finished medical school at a young age, and he was very active as a surgeon, very successful. And when he comes in and starts talking, Jim Kwik asks him, why did you go this route? Why did you get into this longevity work and working on kind of optimizing health? And he said, listen, as with many of us, we get into an area because it's personal. It's important to our own journey. And he, again, had been a surgeon for 20 years and doing kind of heavy duty surgeries like reconstructive surgeries and things. So often, he said, surgeries might last 12 to 16 hours a day, and his body just got worn out, and he started experiencing a lot of health concerns. He developed an autoimmune condition, and all of his biomarkers were off. One of the reasons I really enjoyed this bite-sized episode is he highlighted something that you and I talk quite a bit about, and many of our listeners may already be kind of on board with, but he says, look, I'm trained medically. I believe in the medical system, and it's really good at offering support to fix things through surgery and do some other things. But he said, I had to go outside of that system. I had to train myself and find mentors and find people who look at it differently because our healthcare system really doesn't focus on healthcare. It focuses on disease care and very rarely on resolving the conditions or preventing them. And so he took a major shift in his life for his own health, but then also for his career. So he's also an entrepreneur, and he started a company called Next Health, which are these, I would say, new world kind of medical practices where they really look at a much more holistic approach to what's going on for people. And throughout the episode, he talks about their approach and how it's different. In the US, they're in some major cities. They're starting in some cities around the world. And my guess is they might be out of the realm of reality for some of us due to the expense involved. But I think it's great that we have businesses like that now that are really starting to show us that there's another way. And he highlights this at some point in what he was talking about, but he said many of the strategies that they teach people are free of cost. Doing all the assessment with them and everything, that obviously is not free of cost, but much of what any of us could be doing to help prevent or heal some of these things actually are free of cost. So he said that in his own world, every list of diseases that the CDC rate as the top 10 causes of death, he was experiencing the biomarkers for. So he got very concerned. So this is, again, why he started getting into more of an optimization. Some people might call it biohacking. I kind of like the health optimization way of framing it even better. So we started talking about like, what do they do at their practice? How could all of us be thinking about this more? And he said that the first thing that they do with patients is they look at a kind of framework of optimal health that's divided into two wheels. The wellness wheel, and this is divided up into 12 different categories, and then they take their people through all of these categories. So they start with the basics: sleep, nutrition, exercise or movement. Then they move on to how not to die, preventing cancer, metabolic disease, Alzheimer's, and heart attacks. And then they talk about functional medicine, so things like hormone health and brain health, and gut health and detoxifying your system, and emotional health. Then the other one is looking at the longevity and thinking about how can we prolong life. So that's the first wheel. And the second framework he talked about is the Pareto principle. And you and I have heard this talked about at conferences and probably in some podcasts, but I had never heard it talked about in this way. So it was kind of helpful for me. Basically, the way he described it is 20% of the information that you need is going to move the needle for you 80%. And some of us get so bogged down in the minutia details of decisions that are actually unimportant. It's the 20% of the decisions that are really going to move us in longevity and health and wellness. So he talked about the idea that so often people get caught up in the minutia, like, oh, is it better for me to eat these blueberries or these wild grown elderberries? And he said we get into analysis paralysis and people get so overwhelmed, like all of these rules about what I should and shouldn't do, that they kind of lose track and get overwhelmed. And so they kind of talked about any patient coming in has a different way that they're currently looking at their diet or their exercise or whatever. And some are very informed, some are not very informed, but want to be doing well. And so he really tries to meet them where they are. So he talked about the Pareto principle when it comes to food. And many people might think, oh, this means I should go carnivore. This means I should be paleo, or I should be vegan, or whatever thought. And he said, the 20% that is going to get you the 80% of the results is one big change. And that is eliminating highly processed foods. And then, of course, he went in to kind of describe what that means, but I'm just going to assume at this point that most of us know what that is. And he said one of the challenges, though, is that many people remove them from their home and feel like they're getting that optimized. And he said what people don't realize is that they're still getting them when they're eating out, because a lot of the restaurants and places where you are eating, they're buying the things highly processed in a box from another place on earth and bringing them in. And also, he touched on the seed oils, that even products that seem like they're made of whole foods, if seed oils are used, we are still getting quite the processed food effect. So I thought this was helpful to hear, because I know you and I both subscribe to that, kind of focusing on whole foods, real ingredients, and minimizing the ultra-processed foods. But I think that's an important one for all of us to think about. Doesn't matter whether it's the wild-grown blueberries or these blueberries, the processed foods, we're going to make the biggest difference with that.
Yeah, that was the kind of thing that just used to cause people to have a meltdown in the keto groups, wasn't it? Because someone spied a bit of grated carrot on a salad. It's like, yeah, you need to just zoom out a little bit.
Absolutely. And he actually highlighted it to the degree that he said, of course, everyone's different. They need different things. I focus on different things with them. But 100% of the patients I deal with, that is number one. So it doesn't matter what your approach to eating is or what your health status is. 100% he focuses on getting rid of the ultra-processed food. Then you can start going into other decisions about food. And he then talked about kind of the idea about approaches to eating. Again, paleo, keto, this, or this. And what he highlighted is the Mediterranean diet. Not meaning everyone just needs to follow a Mediterranean diet, but if you think about the kind of principles of the Mediterranean diet, it's significant in that people are eating a fair amount of vegetables, adequate amount of protein from meats, a lot of fish as part of that. And they're also eating some good, well-selected fats, olive oil, avocados, things like that. And he said then even if you're going to move into paleo or keto or whatever, if you keep those principles as a focal point, you're going to more optimize your nutrition. And then he goes into some information about exercise, because again, this is one of his, in that first wheel of wellness. And again, people get really big into, should I be doing cardio? Should I be doing this? Should I be doing this? And his overall kind of Pareto principle with this, again, goes back to 20% that is going to get you 80%. And he said what he encourages people to focus on first is how much time do you spend sitting at work all day? And the idea that the sedentary behavior that most of us engage in quite a bit is what's killing us. You know, he said it doesn't matter if you go to the gym for an hour or if you do a 30-minute workout. If the majority of your day is sedentary, that is the problem. So what do we do about that? How do we interrupt this? And you and I have talked about this in various places, but he talks about a lot of research that has been coming out and showing more and more evidence that, and this number is a little bit shocking for me, for every 10% of time that you spend over 4 hours sedentary adds 15% extra to your mortality rate.
Wow.
So that's really bigger than, did you run for an hour yesterday? Did you sit for 8 hours yesterday? So it's, again, a massive correlation between that sedentary behavior and mortality. So the solution that he and others have been promoting more and more is what he refers to as exercise snacks. If you think of that hour-long run, that is a full meal. More important to be doing exercise snacks. So every 45 minutes of that sedentary time, take a 5-minute break where you get up, you walk around, you might do some jumping jacks, or you might do some push-ups or some squats, which was the one that I had talked with you about as one of my goals. But as long as you're moving every 45 minutes, that counteracts that sedentary, drawback that many are facing. And one way that it does it is it helps our cortisol, that if we interrupt that prolonged cortisol activation by getting up and moving every 45 minutes, we're preventing a lot of the impact of the stress hormone, the cortisol. So they go into another one of the categories in sleep. And I know, Daisy, you've covered sleep a number of times and we've talked about it. And it's such an important one. But again, if we go back to the Pareto principle and people are like trying to figure out all the best things that they should do for their sleep. And again, I think he does a nice job of simplifying it. He's like, hey, look, before you buy the blue blocking glasses and before you do this, he said the number one thing to look at is whether you have sleep apnea. And he said in his clinics, they are finding that over 70% of people coming in have some degree of sleep apnea. And he said even mild sleep apnea has a pretty profound effect on your metabolics and your longevity. So first, working on that. And he goes into some details, if you're snoring a lot, if your partner tells you you're snoring or stopping breathing, or if you wake up gasping for breath, definitely something that you need to get resolved. And then, a lot of sleep researchers have gone into a lot of detail, and he made some kind of simple recommendations about your environment. And that is to make it as close to cold, dark cave as possible. So cutting out as much light as possible and lowering the temperature. And I remember you talking about that. But the other thing he emphasizes is that Your sleep health actually starts the minute you wake up, because what you do right away sets up your next sleep. So he is a big proponent of getting up right away, going outside, getting that sunlight, not getting on the phone right away, not going into the bathroom right away, but getting that. And what that helps us to do, it sets our circadian rhythm for the rest of the day. It sets it up so that our melatonin secretion starts 14 hours later, and it also regulates our cortisol release throughout the day. So again, this little step first thing in the morning can make a huge difference to our sleep optimization later. They then go through with their patients a set of 10 biomarkers that they should all be following, resulting from blood tests and other things that they could follow at home. So he described that you want to watch your skeletal muscle mass. You want to get that into a level that's good for your age, and you want it to stay there, or you want to keep improving it. Your body fat percentage, your blood pressure, especially after you turn 30. And he recommends people checking that at home, even more effective than the blood pressure reading you get at a doctor's office. And then he goes into some more specifics of numbers that we should all know. And those are some biomarkers from blood tests. We should all know our HbA1c. That's our average glucose number. We should all know our hsCRP. That's a measure of our inflammation. He suggests that people should also know their ApoB level, which is looking at those lipid numbers that people always refer to as the bad cholesterols. We should know those numbers. We should all know our vitamin D level, because this is one of the most important micronutrients out there, and also functions as a hormone. And that after age 35, we should all start watching our hormone levels, estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, things like that. And then he really kind of wrapped this up with, we all should be really focusing on being the CEO of our own health. And he said, if you were the CEO of a business, you wouldn't just look at your KPIs. And I remember when I started working at the Fasting Method, I didn't even know what KPIs were. When people would talk about them, I'm like, what the heck? So, those key performance indicators, you wouldn't just go to a consultant once a year and say, hey, what are the KPIs? You'd want to look at them regularly. And some of us, we go to our doctor once a year, every couple of years. And if they don't flag anything, we don't really ask. And he describes being the CEO of your own health means you know those numbers. You are looking at those results. And you're up to date. You're getting them done on a regular basis. Because things can change quite a bit over a year's time. If we take, for example, even the HbA1c, it's an average of your glucose numbers over a 3-month period, meaning getting it checked once a year. There's a lot of variance that can happen over that year. So I got excited by this episode. And like I said, now I'm going to have to go back and listen to the full one on YouTube. But I think it's such a proactive way at looking at optimizing our health and not making it so complex that it doesn't feel manageable. Getting some blood tests regularly, knowing what those look like, and then working on those 80-20 things that he highlighted even in this episode, I think can be really important to all of us.
Yeah, I don't think it might be different depending on the episode. But I know, because he usually mentions it, doesn't he, on the podcast, that the full-length episode is on YouTube.
I have blocked that every single time until just this time.
But yeah, I've actually gone and had a look. And certainly the YouTube episodes that I've seen haven't been that much longer. They've been an extra maybe 5 minutes or something. I think he has a set maximum time he likes his podcast episodes to be. 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it is. And the YouTube ones tend to go a bit over. But maybe some of them are a lot longer. But I know the ones I've seen, really, there's not been that much difference. But there has been a little bit extra that you miss out on. But it's not like Rangan Chatterjee's bite-size 15 minutes as opposed to 2 hours. He doesn't go for the long form. Yeah, I was thinking about, it's something that I mentioned last week, I think, on the list from Rangan Chatterjee about sleep tips, and you just mentioned it now, and we've talked about it before. The importance of getting light when you wake up. And I'm terrible for getting up when I wake up. I rarely do it. I'm one of those snoozers. I always factor in, if I have the alarm set, which I don't every day, I only if I have to be at a certain place. I usually do wake up pretty well the same time every day. But if I know I've got to be at the dog field for the specific time or whatever, then I will set the alarm. But I do always factor in being able to hit the snooze at least once. Because I'm a shocker for it. I always have been. And I quite often wake up a good sleep cycle before I have to get up. And I wonder how much of a difference this makes, because I know you're supposed to go outside and get full light on your eyeballs, which I don't do, certainly within that, whatever it is you're supposed to do, within minutes of waking up. I never do that. But what I do always, I've pretty well always done this, is I don't like having curtains, certainly not blackout curtains, but not curtains on my bedroom window. And I've been lucky. I'm just sort of thinking back over all my bedrooms, and I think I've been lucky with most of them that I haven't needed curtains because there's no one really looking in. And the bedroom I've got now is at the back of the house, so it tends to be dark. At the front, when I was sleeping in my all-purpose room that was a bedroom and living room and everything else, was at the front of the house where there were street lights all the time, so it was never completely dark. But at the back of the house, it does mostly get dark, apart from when my neighbour leaves his lights on all night long. Who does that? Energy bills. Anyway, but it is mostly dark, but it's also east facing. So I get the light streaming in the mornings. So I don't know how much that counts for getting light. Obviously, I get light as soon as I wake up, unless I'm waking up in the dark. But if I'm waking up when the light's streaming in, I am at least getting that light that's coming in through the windows. So I'm hoping that kind of counts, was my long-winded way of getting to that point.
Well, Daisy, even if it doesn't, and I think I've seen some contradictory information about this, that's diffuse light and doesn't have quite the same impact. However, having that light may prevent you from turning on the lights that are detrimental. So he talks about, many of us are in a habit. We get up, we go into the bathroom, we turn on the bright lights, or we turn on our cell phone right up at our face. That's damaging for us first thing. But if you've got natural light coming in, so you're not turning on lights, at least you're not disrupting things more. And then you get up and, you go outside for something, or you go to the dog field or whatever. I think even though it might not be a direct positive, it is a prevention of a direct negative.
That's good. I've always felt on a practical point that it helps me wake up. That's why I've never had curtains, never drawn curtains, because the light streaming in the mornings has always helped wake me up. So it must be doing something, or it wouldn't impact me that way, would it?
Well, think about it in that way. Again, it's pairing with the natural circadian rhythm that we want. Be worse if the sun comes up, let's say at 7 a.m. and you try to stay asleep until 11. You are working against the circadian rhythm. And so having light coming into your room naturally keeps you more aligned with that natural circadian rhythm.
Yeah, and I think I was saying in a few episodes back that it always gets difficult this time of year where the nights start drawing in. And I'd gone very much with the light levels in the summer, although not really waking up when it first got light, because in the summer here it can get light really early, like 4:30 in the morning. But yes, it's not really fully dark at the height of summer till 10:30, 11 or something. And so I was getting into the habit of going to bed as it got dark. But of course, this time of year...
You'd be in bed at 5 p.m.
Yeah, well, this time of year, it's getting crazy. It's sort of like 4:30, it's getting dark now because, of course, the clocks have gone back. So, yeah, so you do go through this. But I have noticed I have gone through a period of readjustment, but it was something I really noticed actually as the summer went into autumn. I don't know if you find this, but it seems to take a nosedive and all of a sudden start getting dark quicker in a much shorter period of time. That curve seems to speed up. And yeah, I was finding myself starting to, can I go to bed at 8 o'clock? But I have sort of adjusted to it now. But yeah, so I think that must show to a certain extent that the light coming in the morning is helping.
Absolutely. I think for me, the takeaway from this episode is going to be the exercise, physical movement, whatever, snacks, in that I do spend a good bit of my day pretty sedentary. And I really want to recommit to finding a way to get up and do a little bit of movement every 45 minutes and make that more of a commitment. Because again, I really think about, of all the ways I could optimize things, that one costs me the least and requires the least help.
Which episode was it? That it was one of our first episodes where I think it was one of yours. I think it might have been. That might have been a Jim Kwik talking to somebody else about blocking time. And that was 45 minutes, I think. You get these clocks that have timers, don't they? And about every so often, 45 minutes, 50 minutes, whatever it is, that you are supposed to get up and move around, or you're just supposed to stop working, that interrupting. I've mentioned it before multiple times, probably, the programme on British TV that I watched about where they were in a house treating people with diabetes, and they did an experiment where they had them pretty well do that. It was once an hour, but on the hour, every hour, they had them get up and move for 5 minutes, and they tested their blood sugar before and they tested it the following day, and there was a significant improvement.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it is something, and we've spoken about it before, haven't we? A bit of movement actually helps you focus more. It actually improves your productivity at work. So yeah, stopping every hour on the hour to, even if it's, well, for me, I tend to work downstairs and my kitchen is upstairs. Even if it was running upstairs to make a cup of tea, you're moving, aren't you? You're getting away from the computer screen. And do some squats while you wait for the kettle to boil. There you go. I've done it.
The benefit I see of it too is it checks off a number of boxes of things that are helpful for our health optimization and longevity. And so it's really more worthwhile. It's not just like this little obscure thing, but it can help metabolically. It can help with stress management. It can help with all of these things. So that's my commitment.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like a good one. I should definitely take that on board too.
Think of how many times you could walk upstairs in a day.
Exactly. Okay, very good. Well, until I see you next time, enjoy your multiple exercise snacks. That's Rongan. He likes his little health snacks, he calls them, all sorts of different exercise snacks and mind snacks and different things, but he's big on his little 5-minute things, isn't he? I hope you have a very wonderful week.
You too, Daisy. And of course, we are all into snacks. I mean, one of the biggest things I talk about every day in my work is eliminating snacks.
I know, that's the first thing that came to my mind.
But maybe we just need to reframe what snacks are. They're
Absolutely.
treats. These are exercise treats.
Healthy snacks.
That's right. Take good care, everybody.